Welcome to the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. Before we dive in, I wanted to note that as a health and wellness coach, I can support you in making sustainable lifestyle changes, tuning into your own wisdom, and building habits that align with your values and vision for your well being. I don't prescribe or treat health conditions, as I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional. Instead, I can walk alongside you as you create a healthier life on your terms. From time to time, I share conversations with guests. The views and opinions expressed by those guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect my views or those of anyone associated with wellness in a chaotic world. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always talk to your doctor or qualified mental health provider about any physical or mental health concerns. This is the Wellness in a Chaotic World podcast, a place where we're having conversations about what it really takes to live well in our unhealthy, chaotic world. I'm your host, Cheryl Davis. If you're beating yourself up over a bag of chips you ate in a stressed out frenzy, or you can't figure out how anyone manages to find the time to even think about wellness, you're in the right place. We talk about all of these things and more because, frankly, we don't talk to each other enough about what we're really up against every day. Let's change that right now. Welcome back to Wellness in a Chaotic World. If you've been told you have prediabetes, chances are you've heard that you should exercise more. But exercise more is very vague. How much more? What kind of exercise? Does it have to be a workout? Does it have to be 30 minutes at a time? And what if finding another 30 or 45 minutes in your day already feels like a stretch? So today I want to talk about walking. More specifically, I want to look at three questions. One, why does walking matter for blood sugar? Two, does it have to be a full workout to count? And finally, number three, how might you experiment with more walking in your life? Before we get into the episode, just a quick reminder that I am a health coach, not a doctor, and this podcast is for education, not medical advice. If you have questions about what kind of or the amount of physical activity is appropriate for you, especially if you have a medical condition or take medications that affect your blood sugar, that's a conversation to have with your healthcare provider. So let's start with the basics. Why does walking matter for blood sugar? When you eat carbs, your body breaks them down into glucose, which enters your bloodstream. Insulin, which is a hormone, helps move that glucose out of your blood and into your cells, where it can be used for energy. One of the really interesting things about physical activity is that your muscles need the energy when they're working. That means that movement can help your muscles take up the glucose. So there's actually something really fascinating happening here. Our muscle cells have glucose transporters called GLUT4. Insulin is one of the signals that helps move those transporters to the surface of the muscle cell where they can bring in the glucose. But muscle contraction can also trigger GLUT4 to move to the surface through a pathway that doesn't depend on insulin in the same way. So when you get up and walk after a meal, those working muscles have another way to increase their uptake of some of the glucose circulating in your bloodstream. Regular physical activity can also improve insulin sensitivity, which basically means your body becomes better at responding to insulin. There are plenty of reasons why physical activity is part of the conversation around preventing type 2 diabetes. The CDC recommends working toward at least 150 minutes a week of moderately intense physical activity, such as brisk walking, as part of reducing that risk of progressing from prediabetes to type 2 diabetes. But when we hear 150 minutes a week, it can be really easy to immediately start doing the math. Okay, that's 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Now I need to find another half an hour every day. I need my workout clothes. I need a plan. Maybe I need a gym membership now. And suddenly, move more has become a whole project. But there's another part of the research that I think is very useful. It turns out that shorter periods of movement matter too. So that kind of answers the question, does it have to be a full workout to count? There have been several studies looking specifically at what happens when people move after eating or when you break up long periods of sitting with short bouts of movement. One study compared one 30-minute walk each day with three 10-minute walks after meals in adults with type 2 diabetes. The researchers found that walking for 10 minutes after each main meal resulted in lower post-meal blood glucose than taking one 30-minute walk at another time of day. The effect was particularly noticeable after the evening meal. Another small study looked at older adults who were inactive and at risk for impaired glucose tolerance. Researchers compared one 45-minute walk with three 15-minute walks after meals. Again, those shorter post-meal walks improved glucose control with a noticeable effect after dinner. Now, I want to be careful here. These were small studies, and one of them was specifically conducted in people who already have type 2 diabetes. So I don't want you to hear this and walk away thinking that science has discovered some magic formula where everyone with prediabetes needs to walk exactly 10 minutes after every meal. That's not what the research tells us. But there is a larger body of research suggesting that breaking up sitting with light walking can improve the way our bodies handle glucose after eating. A 2022 systematic review and meta-analysis looked at studies comparing prolonged sitting with short interruptions of either standing or light walking. Light walking reduced post-meal glucose and insulin compared with continuing to sit. And interestingly, walking appeared to have a greater effect than simply standing. Some of the studies included really short periods of movement, like 2 minutes of walking every 20 minutes or 5 minutes every 30 minutes. I think that's worth paying attention to. Not because 2 minutes is now the new magic number either, but because it challenges the idea that movement only matters if we put on our workout clothes and do enough of it to call it exercise. And even the CDC uses taking a 10-minute walk after dinner as an example of a simple way to start becoming more physically active. So, does a 10-minute walk really matter? It can. But I think the more useful takeaway is this. The research gives us a reason to pay attention to movement after meals. It doesn't give us a reason to obsess over doing it perfectly. You don't have to start a stopwatch the second you put your fork down. And you don't have to decide that if you only have 5 minutes, it's not worth doing. There's evidence that even relatively short periods of movement can have an effect. And that brings me to the part of this conversation that I am the most interested in. How might you experiment with more walking in your life? Knowing that walking can help with blood sugar is information. Now we have to figure out what to do with that information. And that answer is probably going to look different for different people. Maybe dinner is the easiest place to start. You finish eating, you put your shoes on, and you walk around the block. Maybe your lunch break gives you a better opportunity. Maybe you work from home and you could take a quick walk down the road before sitting back down at your computer. Maybe walking outside isn't realistic at all. You could walk through the house, go up and down the stairs a few times, or find another way to move your body. Maybe 10 minutes sounds completely doable. Maybe right now 5 minutes feels more realistic. The question I'd ask isn't, what is the perfect walking routine for prediabetes? I would ask, where is there already an opportunity in your day to move a little more? And then experiment. Maybe this week you take a short walk after dinner a couple times, see what gets in the way, see what makes it easier, see whether you enjoy it, see whether there's another time of day that actually works better. And then use what you learn to decide what you do next. Because if you have prediabetes, there are a lot of things you could change. You could change how you eat. You could change how you move. You could work on your sleep. You can manage your stress. But knowing that all of those things can matter doesn't necessarily tell you where to start. Sometimes the first step really can be as simple as asking, what's one thing I can try? And a short walk might be a pretty good experiment. If you've been diagnosed with prediabetes and you're trying to figure out what your first steps could look like, that's also what we explore in my free workshop called My Doctor Says I Have Prediabetes. Now what? You can find information about the next workshop through the link in the show notes. And you can also find links to some of the studies that I referenced in this episode. If you've been considering coming to this workshop, I would love to have you there. And if the workshop doesn't sound right for you quite yet, I would love to still have a conversation. You can always reach out to me anytime through email at cheryl@wellnessinachaoticworld.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm so glad you could join me for this episode. And please remember, better health doesn't happen in a perfect world. It happens in this one. Take care, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it, or take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It really does help more people find these conversations. And if you're ready to start creating change in a way that actually feels good and sustainable for you, you can learn more about working with me in the show notes. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. If today's episode resonated with you, our private Facebook group is a great place to dive deeper, ask questions, and share wins with people who understand. It's free, it's private, and you can join by clicking the link in the episode description. I hope to see you there.